I'd like to welcome all of you to our workshop today, which is entitled FDA-Regulated Research, Innovation, and Compliance. This is really a joint effort. As many of you know, there's been great interest at Ohio State over the last probably 20 years in the area of translational therapeutics, both in the development of new drugs that are targeted, biologics, and devices. And so this is really an effort between the Ohio State University Office for Responsible Research Practices, the Center for Clinical and Translational Science, of which I'm the PI and the director, and Nationwide Children's Hospital. I think kind of to put this in context to you, certainly never before has there been such an urgency to rethink the way in which therapeutics and devices are discovered and developed. Our drug and device development over the last 20 years has actually grown to be increasingly less efficient. At the same time that our understanding of the biological processes from that basic science discovery has actually exploded and given us an incredible amount of opportunities. For example, if you think just over the last decade, we now have more than 5,000 new diseases where we know specifically what the genetic underpinnings of those, which gives us an incredible opportunity to actually develop new therapeutics. Yet, if you look at the number of new drugs that we've actually moved forward along the translational science pipeline, they've been very, very few. So it becomes absolutely critical that we look at these opportunities and in fact begin to identify and really move together collaboratively at addressing the challenges in this therapeutic pipeline in order to be able to actually really build upon the promise, which is of course ultimately why all of us are here, which is to improving human health. I think part of the problem, and those of you who've seen me talk before have probably seen this slide, but I think that it's become also increasingly clear to all of us that we have to address some of these challenges inherent in clinical and translational research that impede the process. And so in the past, we considered this process of translation to actually be unidirectional and iterative. But in fact, now I think it's become much more clear to us that in fact it's not only bidirectional, but in fact it's multidirectional. So that observations that are seen in the clinic or actually out in the communities can actually drive basic science discovery, help us to find targets and move things forward. Or conversely, new findings in the clinic, at the bench can actually move forward not only for looking at spontaneous animal models of disease and client animals, but then to move that information forward to actually treat the human condition, and then get the implementation out there by the healthcare providers who in fact make these treatments a success. You also know, and you've probably seen the literature over the last 10 years, that the process is inherently slow. So from the idea, from the concept, from the actual target to FDA approval and to adoption, at best takes about 17 years. And when you add on top of that, the fact that the majority of ideas that we have actually fail, you can see that we've got a lot of work to do in understanding those go, no-go decisions. How do we take care of these translational hurdles and move things forward that ultimately we want is to get that rigorous and best information to patients and their families. So one of the things that we have to do is really come together and work together as a single team. And so when you think about translational science, think about the fact that this is really what we call team science, and that it takes all of us to accomplish these goals. It's a collaboration between basic scientists, between clinical investigators and their research teams, between industry, the FDA and regulatory sciences, and maybe most importantly, between not only our participants, our research subjects, but in fact the patients that we ultimately treat. And so if we work together and to think about these things, we can really get over not only that original valley of death that all of you have heard about in that T1 space, bringing that information from the bench and moving it over to the bedside into clinical research, but we can also really address that second major valley of death, which is when we actually think that we have good targets, moving those out into clinical practice, understanding who best can be treated with these, and then ultimately adopt that, working together with payers and others so that in fact it's available to all. So today we're really going to try to highlight some of the obstacles for you and begin to propose some opportunities where we can work together and where we can improve the process. This workshop is actually going to emphasize not only the scientific components, but really to look at the regulatory and ethical aspects of conducting therapeutic development, both for drugs and for devices, and then really discuss the practical aspects of collecting and performing research in an FDA-regulated setting. In the setting of these unprecedented opportunities, but unfortunately, as probably all of you in this room know, some of the unprecedented challenges that we also have to reach associated with biomedicine, we hope that this information that we share today will actually empower you and your research teams to deliver on the promise of biomedicine to actually advance human health. If you look around the room, and you probably all know that we have a second room where we're streaming this information. We have over 187 individuals that registered for the event, and in fact, Kim said there's been a lot of people who've continued to walk up today and to join us. So there's a lot of interest across Ohio State University and Nationwide Children's in this area to really make a difference. They also really reflect all the members of the research team. So not only do we have individuals here who are basic scientists, but we also have clinician investigators, practicing physicians, clinical research staff, administrative staff, regulatory and compliance staff, and of course individuals from industry as well. A couple of housekeeping tasks, because I always get assigned that kind of opportunity. For those of you who would like coffee or other things, we have live streaming in room 105, so feel free to go there. And the bathrooms, I think, are that direction and this direction. Okay, only that direction as well. There are credit hours, so this has been approved for both CME, clinical research education credits, and CP credits. And you'll see on the slides that have been up before that the number of hours for each of these different groups is going to be displayed. And then lastly, because it is a CME and other event, it is important that you do fill out the evaluations. So there are paper evaluations that you're going to need to fill out as you leave today. But as importantly, we'll be following up with you with email with additional requests for some feedback. And please give it to us. Obviously, the most important thing for all of us is to be able to create the kinds of workshops and conferences and experiences that really help all of you do your job and to do it more effectively.